People think the hardest day is the day you discover the betrayal. It isn't. The hardest day is the first normal day after. The morning you wake up and remember before opening your eyes. The moment you reach for your phone to text someone who no longer belongs in your life. The silence where routines used to live. I stayed with my sister for 2 weeks. She tried to help the only way people know how: distractions, movies, long talks, carefully avoiding his name. But healing doesn't happen in the place your pain was witnessed, so I left. Not dramatically, not bravely, quietly. I moved to a small town 2 hours away where nobody knew my story, my engagement, or the version of me that stayed too long. The apartment was tiny. One window, thin walls, a refrigerator that hummed louder than my thoughts at night. It was perfect, because for the first time in years, every object in my space belonged only to me. I worked mornings at a storage office answering phones. Evenings, I cleaned a dental clinic. Not because I was ambitious, because routine is the only medicine strong enough to carry you through emotional withdrawal. And that's what heartbreak really is: withdrawal from a life you were addicted to. The first month, I still checked my messages every morning. By the third month, I checked once a week. By the sixth month, I didn't want to know anymore. I never asked if they stayed together. Not knowing was freedom. I started therapy after realizing strength alone wasn't healing me. It was just delaying the damage. My therapist once told me something that changed everything. You didn't lose them the day they betrayed you. You lost yourself the day you accepted less than honesty. That sentence followed me everywhere. So I began rebuilding someone I had never actually met, a version of me that existed without trying to be needed. I enrolled in night classes at a community college, business administration. Not a dream, a direction. Numbers made sense when emotions didn't. Processes were predictable when people weren't. I wasn't becoming powerful. I was becoming stable. A year later, the clinic hired a consulting company to reorganize scheduling systems. That's where I met Mr. Carter. He wasn't impressive at first glance. No expensive suit, no dramatic speeches. He just noticed things. He watched how I handled frustrated patients, how I solved problems before they escalated. One evening he asked, "Why are you working here?" I thought it was criticism. I said, "I need the income." He shook his head. "No, I mean, why are you still working below your ability?" Nobody had ever asked me that. Not Daniel, not Olivia, not even myself. He offered me a temporary administrative contract at his consulting firm in the city, 3 months. I almost declined. Starting over again felt dangerous, but comfort had already cost me years of my life, so I accepted. I didn't shine immediately. I observed, listened, took notes others didn't think mattered. Where old me tried to please everyone, new me tried to understand systems. Mr. Carter didn't mentor me with compliments. He mentored me with responsibility, mistakes included. I learned negotiation by sitting silently in meetings, learned confidence by preparing twice as much as necessary, learned leadership isn't loud, it's consistent. Months became a year. Temporary became permanent. Assistant became coordinator. Coordinator became project manager. And something strange happened. I stopped replaying the past, not because I forgave them, because my present required more attention than my history demanded. One night after work, a coworker mentioned Daniel's name casually. Apparently, he'd worked briefly at a marketing agency that struggled with clients. I felt nothing. No racing heart, no anger, just distance. That's when I realized healing isn't when you stop hurting, it's when their story stops being the most interesting part of yours. 3 years after the day I walked out of my apartment, Mr. Carter called me into his office. He said he was reducing his workload and restructuring leadership. Then he slid a folder across the desk. Inside was a partnership development track. My hands didn't shake. Not because it wasn't important, but because I had finally built a life where opportunities felt like continuation, not rescue. For the first time in my adult life, my future wasn't attached to anyone else's potential. It was attached to my own preparation. I drove home that evening without turning on the radio. No dramatic celebration, just a quiet understanding. The girl who apologized for being betrayed would never exist again. Success doesn't arrive with a trumpet sound. Most of the time, it arrives disguised as responsibility. By my 4th year at the firm, I wasn't just managing projects anymore. I was managing people, schedules, budgets, client expectations, team conflicts. Problems that once intimidated me had become daily routine. Mr. Carter trusted my decisions enough to stop correcting them. And that was the moment I understood growth, when supervision turns into consultation. The company began expanding into restructuring failing agencies, businesses that were bleeding money but still had potential if someone imposed order. One of those acquisitions landed on my desk, a mid-sized marketing agency struggling with client retention and internal organization. My job was simple on paper: evaluate staff, keep who was effective, replace who wasn't. Human decisions written in spreadsheet language. I spent 2 days reviewing employee files, performance reports, attendance records, internal notes. Then I opened the list of employees scheduled for final review interviews. The third name made my hand pause on the mouse: Olivia Harper. For a moment, my brain treated it like coincidence. Common name, different person. Then I opened the personnel photo. Time does something interesting to recognition. Faces mature, styles change, but familiarity lives in posture, in the way someone holds their confidence. It was her. 3 years disappeared in a single silent second. I leaned back in my chair and waited for a reaction. Anger, pain, vindication. None arrived. Instead, I felt something unexpected. Distance, like remembering a movie I watched years ago. I didn't reschedule. I didn't warn HR. I simply left the appointment where it was. Thursday, 10:30 a.m. The morning of the interviews, I dressed the same way I always did. Neutral tones, structured blazer, hair tied back. Not armor, uniform. By the time her slot approached, I had already interviewed 2 employees. Normal conversations, performance discussions. Then there was a knock on the glass office door. I didn't look up immediately. "Come in." The door opened. Silence entered before she did. I finished writing one last note before lifting my eyes, and there she was. Olivia looked confident walking in, until recognition reached her. People think shock looks dramatic. It doesn't. It looks like stillness struggling to breathe. Her posture changed first, then her expression followed. "Emma?" My voice stayed even. "Please, have a seat." She didn't move for a second. The brain takes time to update reality when expectations collapse. She sat slowly, eyes searching my face for emotion she remembered knowing how to manage. She wouldn't find it. I opened her performance file, not to intimidate her, to keep myself anchored in professionalism. "We'll conduct this as a standard role evaluation," I said. She swallowed. "You work here?" "Yes." The single word carried no history, just fact. Her hands tightened together in her lap. "I didn't know." "I assumed you didn't." Silence stretched between us, heavy but controlled. She tried again, softer. "Lyra." I lifted my eyes. "Miss Harper, let's keep this professional." That hurt her more than anger ever could, because distance removes access, and access is what betrayal always expects to keep. I continued the interview, asked about client handling procedures, campaign strategy, team coordination. At first, her answers stumbled. Then survival instincts took over and she focused. 20 minutes passed as if the past didn't exist, but tension lived under every word. When the interview ended, she didn't stand immediately. Her voice came out smaller than I'd ever heard it. "Are you going to fire me?" A fair question, not emotional, practical. I closed the folder. That decision will be based on performance and company needs. Her eyes glossed slightly, not crying, just overwhelmed by a reality she couldn't influence with familiarity. She nodded and stood. At the door, she hesitated. I didn't let her finish. This meeting is concluded. She left quietly. The door closed, and for the first time since seeing her name, I exhaled. Not from pain, from confirmation. The past had no power left unless I handed it some. That afternoon, HR asked for my final staffing decisions. I reviewed every file again carefully. Numbers, results, work ethic. Then I marked the outcome beside Olivia Harper's name. Retain. Not mercy, not revenge, just fairness. Because power isn't proven by hurting people who once hurt you. It's proven by no longer needing to.